most of you probably have coming up in July, and some of you might have coming up even earlier than that. So, yes, confirmed recording. Really quick introduction for myself. I am a referee in the Mid-American Conference. This is going to be my 15th year as a referee. Started out in the Great Lakes Division II Conference here in Michigan, and then it was Ohio and Indiana. It's shrunken considerably since then. Coming off a recent bowl assignment and the MAC championship game. For outside of football, I work, or actually used to work at the crash test laboratory for Chrysler at the Proving Grounds here in Chelsea, Michigan. Recently just accepted a new offer in their technology research and development organization. You have my info there if you need it, but when it comes to rules tests, you don't really care what we can do on the field. It's all about what we can do when we're taking rules. And that's what we're going to talk about today is trying to adjust our mentality and adjust our mindset from how we handle plays and situations on the field to how we take or how to take a rules test. 100% on the CFO test for 20 straight years, but anybody can do that. We all get in our rule study groups and study sessions. And I think about 4 hours after it comes out, there's a answer key that just transposes throughout the entire nation. But that COC Times rules exam, most of you have probably heard about it. Most of you might have probably taken it. That thing is a bear. It's 30 questions in 25 minutes. It's extremely difficult from a time pressure situation. The questions are not easy, and you have no choice because of the time crunch to take it closed book. Happy to say that since we've started this process on our crew that we're going to be discussing with you all today, not only have we increased our crew average significantly, but we've also taken our crew retake frequencies down considerably. Surprisingly enough, that COC test has a failure rate of roughly 30% of officials on the staff. It's no joke. The passing score ranges between 70 and 75 every single year. And when we're considering that you have 30% of Division I level football officials not achieving that score, it just kind of shows you how difficult that is. And when you think about it, when there's 10 people on an officiating crew, that means 3 people per crew are having to retake that test. I'm hoping with a few things that you might learn here, coupled with obviously a lot of rule study in the book, you guys might be able to overcome that barricade and barrier as well. So how we're going to do this, we're going to do an engineering style approach. Sorry to say I'm an engineer by trade. I'm an engineer by heart. I try to look at things and break them down to a process-based scenario. So what we're going to do here is kind of reverse engineer a rules quiz really quick. So what I'd like everybody to do, if you have an opportunity to take out your phones, if you're watching this meeting on your phone, you might want to, or you should be able to participate still, but go ahead and just scan this code and go to the QR code on your screen. It should open up a quick little link with a single question Google form on it. That question just simply says, transpose the play on the screen into a rules test question. Pretty soon you guys are going to end up seeing a play on your screen once you guys all have a chance to scan it. And if you guys aren't able to scan it, I'm going to go ahead and paste the link in the meeting chat as well. So go ahead and click that link or scan that QR code. We'll give everybody about 30 more seconds, and then we'll go over to the video. And all I need you guys to do is, after watching the play a couple times, it'll loop probably about 4 times between the TV feed and the 2 coaches' feeds. Write the rules test question. We'll take about 5 minutes for this exercise. We'll switch over the video now.
Could you redisplay the link, please?
That's coming up at halftime. Air Force and Baylor 9-0 with under 2 minutes to play in the second quarter. Let's go back to Brian Custer.
Shankman drops the football, picks it up. He's going to run with it, but there's the flag. That could have been disastrous. Jacob picked up about 4 yards after dropping it.
Holding. Offense number 8. 10-yard penalty. First down.
Sonny Pat Sims. Yep, the tight end. Moving back into their own territory.
See the hold here on the right side, number 8. David loses the football.
Just so we all have the same information, the hold is on number 8 on the offense. We're running out of bounds around the 42 or 43 yard line. Some responses coming in already. Got 13 responses in so far. We'll wait for a few more to come in before we'll resume. A couple more minutes for folks to click submit.
He's going to run with it, but there's the flag. That could have been disastrous. Jacob picked up about 4 yards after dropping it.
Holding. Offense number 8. 10-yard penalty. First down.
Sonny Pat Sims.
Yep, the tight end. Moving back into their own territory.
See the hold here on the right side, number 8. David loses the football.
All right, I think we got everybody in who's ready to submit. So let's take a look and see some of our responses.
That's coming up at halftime.
All right, looking at rules questions. So this is what you guys have submitted for a rules question. First one, A8 holds B99 behind the LOS. Where do we enforce the foul from? Not bad. Next one, 1 and 10 at B48. Quarterback A1 fumbled the snap at the A48 after recovery by A1. A8 holds at the A50. A1 runs out of bounds at the B42. Okay. Next one, 1st and 10, @B-47. QB A12 scrambled to his left. After muffing the ball, A8 holds B at the B-48. A12 runs out of bounds at the B-42. Next one, A, 1st/10 at the B-47, or no at the, just B-47. So you guys are reading these and you're kind of seeing how I'm kind of reading them verbatim for everyone, at least I hope. What are you guys noticing? You can either raise your hand or if you want, take it off mute. Are you guys seeing some differences, seeing some similarities when it comes to how we're responding to this rules test question?
There are lots of different ways to try that people interpret the play in putting it in writing.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Keith. So you hit the nail on the head there. This was a very simple play from scrimmage that had a holding foul. Easy peasy, right? Behind the line of scrimmage, we're enforcing it from the previous spot. Doesn't really matter what the result of the play was because it was a running play that gained positive yards. So what seems extremely simple for us on the football field can get extremely complex on a rules test just based off of how the author has decided to write the question. So what kind of similarities are you guys seeing here?
That they all identify it's a running play.
Yeah, what type of play it is. What else?
The foul on.
Yep, the foul on the play. Anything else?
There's a foul by A. Offense.
Foul by A, foul on the offense, down distance, knowing
Or
what the line of
play
game is, where the play ends, what the result of the play is. That's a big one.
Clock status.
Clock status is a big one as well. Correct.
Where the holding took place.
Where the foul occurred. That's another big one. So here's a couple examples of this play written by 4 different, very well-known test authors. The person who writes the NFL rules test. The person who writes the CFO Nationals rules test. Ron Gilbert and the way he writes his quizzes back in the day. The person who writes the COC quizzes. They all have a different style on how they can potentially produce the same play. The font might be different. The font size could be different. The way that the question is actually presented when it comes to how they write 1st and 10 outright versus 1/10 at symbol. All of that stuff is basically just designed to throw you off. It stinks, but those are just tricks of the trade that some rules test questions or rules test writers throw at us to try to trick us into going down the wrong path, potentially on a rules test. So what you all need to do is identify the key items that you need to take away from every single question. And those are the things that are on the same, or those are the things that are always listed that are similar on every single rules question, regardless of the way it's written. Who has the ball at the start of the play? Who has the ball at the end of the play? What the down distance and line to gain is, and what the result of the play is. And then the rest of the stuff could eventually just be mush. It could just be stuff that you don't even need to get to the right answer. Rules test writers throw that stuff at you on a regular basis as well. So how do we get around this? How are we going to be able to beat that process, to beat the author, to essentially master a rules test? Again, we're going to talk about a process approach. We talk about process and replay. We talk about process when it comes to officiating a play. So we're going to apply a little bit of process techniques to football officiating as well. So what we like to do is develop a plan of attack, develop a process, and this is how we're going to handle it, or this is how we like to handle things on our crew. Ultimately, you have to do what's best works for you and your team. But I'm hoping that I'm going to share a couple things on your today that you might be able to put in your arsenal and apply to already a world-class rules-taking technique. So the first thing that I love to do, categorize every single question. We as football officials work in categories all the time. We can recite the categories of OPI, DPI, holding all day long. We can talk about 913 and 914 targeting and the flow chart that, or the process it takes us to get to a 913 or 914 foul. So let's do the same with rules questions. Our minds are already programmed that way as football officials. So we should be able to figure out some way to categorize rules test questions. What I like to do is categorize them in a few different ways. Number one is penalty enforcement. If it just has to deal with penalty enforcement, usually it's just a math problem at that point. Changes of possession is another category I like to use. Scoring plays, enforcements in the try, if they're declined by rule. That's gets a category on itself, mainly because we have a lot of special enforcements when it comes to scoring plays. Certain fouls are declined by rule when other penalties are not. Try and overtime downs. If you look at the rule book in the in Rule 3 for overtime and in Rule 8 for try downs, the penalty enforcements for tries or for fouls that occur after a change of team possession are exactly the same. They're written the exact same. So you can kind of formulate and put try downs and overtime downs or overtime questions in the same category, because if you have a change of team possession, those penalties are going to be enforced the same regardless. And then ultimately a change of team possession gets its own category as well. Punts, clean versus dirty hand principle, PSK is a big one, and then illegal touching is always a nightmare. So when you get these questions categorized, you can start to track which questions you're good at, which questions you need a little bit more help on. You might be a master at penalty enforcement plays, but when it comes to changes of possession, you tend to miss 50 or 60% of those. What you need to do then is start focusing your efforts and practice toward those plays so you can get better and more efficient at that particular category of the play. I just said that magic E word, and I should have led with this, but when it comes to rules test and test taking, especially time test taking, it is about trying to maximize your efficiency during that test. What do I mean by efficiency? Definitely not speed. If you go through and fly through things with speed, ultimately we're going to screw things up. When we miss a rules question, all we end up doing is creating waste. Efficiency is maximizing your output with the minimum amount of input. So what that means is trying to make sure that our output is a successful answer with the least amount of input as possible. The least amount of input means eliminating whatever waste is generated during our rules test question answering process. So what is waste? Waste is having to reread an entire question from the get-go. You probably all think about this. You read the question once, and then you read the options, and you forget one part of the question and have to go back and read the whole thing again. That second time around is all waste. It's a waste of time to have to go back and waste 30 seconds of question reading just to get to the one point that you need to get yourself to the correct answer. So figure out ways to try to reduce that waste, retain the information you need, pulling those bits and pieces out one at a time. Other things that we're going to deep dive. Identify the must-knows. We talked about that a little bit. Be on the lookout for sneaky tricks, special circumstances, and outlier questions. We'll hit those, and then develop your own set of best practices. Practice, practice, practice is what I love to say. The one thing that I do assume, though, going into this discussion is that everyone on this call already knows the rules. Obviously, to master a rules test, you have to be able to master the rules book. Now, I'm not going to go through and tell everybody how to study the rules book from start to finish. Everyone has their own different method. You all have the method that works best for you, and we can probably have an entire another call on how to best study the rules. I'm going into this discussion assuming that most of you guys are already masters of that rules book, or at least are familiar enough with it to be able to find a reference to refer to rule on a whim when it's brought up by a test question. So the must-knows, the things that you need to know on every single rules question. First thing, the result of the play. We need to know it on the football field every single time. What's the result of the play? We have to know it when we're taking rules questions. Know the result of the play, not just where a runner runs out of bounds or not, but what is the true result? Was it a first down or was the runner short? Was the passing complete or caught? Was the ball fumbled and recovered by B or not? Those type of things, if you get to the full result and process it like you do on the football field, you're going to be able to not only get to the answer a lot quicker, but also probably eliminate at least two of the answers that are part of the multiple choice in that list. What do we get every single time? And you can throw this in the chat box or you can come out loud and say it. If you know the result of the play, what will we be able to know when it comes to answering the question or answering
Ball
the
status.
question?
Ball status. I mean, it's clock status.
Bingo, Cleo, you nailed it. Clock status, right? If you know the result of the play, you get clock status every single time, which means if you all think about how rules tests are written, they're usually two sets of answers, and each set of answers has ready and snap on it. So just like that, by knowing the result of the play, you know exactly whether or not the clock's going to go on the ready or go on the snap in the next play, which means two of your answers, half of your answers just got eliminated. It just turned into a coin flip for you at the very worst. Not too bad. Foul info, just like we do on the football field. Who, what, where, when. So was it during the loose ball play? Was it during the run play? Before or after the change of team possession? Sometimes what I like to do is draw a two-dimensional line on a piece of paper and start it with the snap, finish it with the end of the play or whatever it might be. And if there's a change of team possession or a loose ball period, I'll put physical lines in that or tick marks on that two-dimensional line, indicating a moment in time where that event occurs. So then all you need to know is where the foul occurs, and it'll take you to the basic spot. Once you know the basic spot, you know where the penalty is supposed to be enforced. And again, from there, it just turns into a math problem. So if you're more of a visual person, being able to draw that out and see what moment in time along the play that that foul occurs should be able to take you to the basic spot a lot quicker. And again, get you to just the math portion of these rules test questions. The penalty yardage is a must know. The basic spots a must know. Again, that's just rules knowledge, Rule 10 mainly. Down distance, line to gain, must knows. The play type, is it a loose ball play, a running play, a scrimmage kick, or a free kick, or a try? And notice that phraseology that I used. I didn't use pass, fumble, interception, punt, field goal, because none of those are found in Rule 10. The phraseology that you need to know when it comes to Rule 10 and finding the basic spot is running play, loose ball play, scrimmage kick play, free kick play, or try down, or overtime down. So if you start thinking about it in that phraseology and that terminology, again, you'll get yourself back to the basic spot that much quicker. You know, the basic spot, again, turns into a math problem. Watch out for sneaky tricks. Those are the worst. If the fouls include an ejection or a DQ, no matter what, even if they decline it, that person's going to be gone. Zap 10 is always a sneaky trick. And a lot of times with Zap 10 questions, 10-second subtraction questions, they're going to throw multiple correct answers in the answer column, and it's up to you to pick the best one based off of the time, score, and situation. Don't expect to get bailed out by the A and B are both options that the CFO test loves to put in there. It's going to be up to us to determine, okay, because B is losing right now and A is the team that fouled, B is going to want to decline the Zap 10 and conserve their time. And that's the answer that you're going to want to have to go to. So be aware of those sneaky tricks. Under 2 minutes, under 1 minute, when time changes are a factor. Another one that I didn't write in here because it wasn't a rule yet when I created this PowerPoint is any first down that's over 2 minutes with in the first or second quarter, or any first down that's over 2 minutes in the third and fourth quarter. That's going to be a clock running, especially if it's on a legal play. And then pay special attention anytime you have a penalty spot or a play end in between the 40-yard lines, or even snap from the 40-yard lines. It's really easy to put a negative sign on the other side of the field and enforce a foul or in the wrong direction or from the opposite side of the 50. A lot of times what I like to do is if I see 1st and 10 from the A47, my mind immediately goes to, okay, 1st and 10 from the 53-yard line. That means they need the 43-yard line. And it makes the math a little bit easier when you're crossing the 50. Don't get caught up when that 50-yard line comes into play. So develop your best practices. My best practices and a few things that I pulled from a lot of discussions with our crews year after year are up on this slide. Number one, and I recommend this for everybody, the first thing you get to is the result of the play. Like I said, it gets you the clock status first things first. And if you know the result of the play, you might even be able to get to the acceptance or declination of a foul right away as well. Second thing, this is what I try to do as an engineer, but I try to find the objective of each question. What is this question actually trying to teach me? What rule is this trying to point to? I start with the end in mind. If I can find out what the objective of this question is, maybe I can try to work my way around it and get and piece the important information out and filter out all the stuff that you don't need a little bit quicker. We talked about the 2D timeline a little bit. Just a straight line and a piece of scratch paper is all you need. Another one, we talked about tracking and reviewing the question categories you miss a lot. A big one that I like, it makes me go a lot faster on these time tests, is writing down the necessary info on a piece of scratch paper the same way every single time. What some folks like to do, me included, is for every single question, I will set up a couple pieces of paper with a grid with the letter A, B, C, and D next to it. And I know A is always going to be my line to gain. B is always going to be the previous spot. C is going to be the yardage for a foul that was committed. Or I have a couple ways of doing shorthand if there's multiple fouls. And then D is any other element that I feel that is important during that rules question. And what I'm able to do with that now is, instead of having to reread an entire question, if I have to look at the line of scrimmage or what the line of gain was, I just go to my scratch pad and find it immediately because it's in the same spot on my grid every single time for every question, rather than having to try to reread and find it in an entire paragraph of rules questions on the internet or on the screen. Try to use the process of elimination when in doubt. And then some folks like to go through before they even look at the choices and answer their question. A lot of times people get thrown off a little bit if they go down and look at option 1, 2, and 3, or maybe even the COC loves doing this, putting like 10 different options in a list, which makes it even harder to read, because now not only did you have to read a paragraph long question, but you got to filter through 10 options to get to the right one. Man, oh man, what a pain in the rump. So some folks just like to say, okay, I think the answer is this. They go through, yep, there it is on the list, answer it, click next, and move on. Last thing, and the same thing applies for working on the football field that it does here when we're taking rules tests and rules questions. Don't dwell on a question that you think you kicked. Don't dwell on a question that you think you got wrong. If you're dwelling on that, you're going to screw up again. And as Jerry Markbright always says, 2 mistakes are twice as bad as 1. So you have to move on to the next play. You have to move on to the next snap. You have to move on to the next question. Take the same mentality that we have on the football field and apply it to your rules test knowledge and rules test taking abilities as well. Questions on that before we move on? The Q&A looks pretty blank. That was kind of a fire hose approach. Looking easy. Wow. All right.
Hey, Jerry.
Well, yeah.
Hey, one quick question for you. Could you expand a little bit on the where you say about writing the information down on a piece of paper using A, B, C, and D? Does that mean like clock, yard line? Like what things are you referencing there?
It could be whatever things you want. And what I would recommend, Mark, would be, we're going to have an opportunity in a couple weeks when the CFO national test comes out. Take that test in 25 question segments and treat it like the COC test and do it timed the first time through. But don't hold yourself to those 30 minutes. But pay attention more to what items that you're looking for when you have to go back and reread a question. We all have to do it. I have yet to take a rules test where I haven't had to go back and reread a question and have a little bit of waste. The key is trying to minimize the amount of times we need to do that. So whatever items of the play or whatever key elements of the play you find yourself missing the most, those are usually what my A, B, C, and D items are. It's going to be different for every single individual. But once you identify what key elements exist for a rules test, and we kind of saw, or we seen a number of those key elements on the responses that everybody gave at the start of the session. Down and distance, line to gain, result of the play, inbounds versus out of bounds. Those are the items that you might want to start throwing down on a piece of scratch paper really quick. As long as it's the same way for whoever, whatever individual it is, once you start doing it, make sure it's the same way every single time, so it becomes more routine for you, both as you're reading the question through the first time, and then also as you're referring to your notes as the quiz is taking place. Does that answer your question?
Yep, thank you.
Perfect. So we're going to put our process to work here. And we're going to take a quick little rules test. There's 4 questions here. Again, like everybody to go ahead and scan that sheet or scan that QR code, or you can go to the link that is in the chat. And we're going to take probably about 10 minutes, maybe a little less, to take this quiz. When I gave this previously, I only had a 20-minute window to present this in. So now that I have about 50 minutes, we'll give some folks more time to complete this test. And I want to try to have you guys put the process at work. These questions are purposely hard. I'm not going to throw softballs up at folks after going through and trying to talk about how to master a rules test. There are a lot of tricks in there. There's some curveballs that we need to identify. So go through and take these 4. Give it a try on the answer, and probably about 8:52, we will go in and review these after the fact. So have at it. We'll be back and resume, or at least I'll be back after I refill my water in about 6 to 8 minutes. Reds and greens are starting to fill up on my screen a little bit. We'll take about 3 more minutes. Let people fill it up.
Is to buy, and then it's like, oh, cool. Like you split firewood to just pay.
All right. Wrap things up really quick. Results are in. Do it one more quick refresh. We had 1 perfect score, 2 perfect scores. Congratulations, guys. I think that's Tony Romano, perhaps. Maybe his second time around. I see 2 attempts on there. Blind Booth, single attempt, got a 100% score. Fantastic, whoever that might be. But, as you guys can see, not an easy one. We'll go over the questions one by one and kind of apply this process and talk these through before we let everybody go. So the first question, 10% of us got it right. 2nd and 2 on the 48-yard line. A33 fumbles on the B's 49. B44 recovers and advances to A4 where he's hit and fumbles. The ball rolls through A's end zone. This can be a group discussion. If you guys feel like unmuting, you're more than welcome to. Team A has 5 players in the backfield. During B44's run, B96 is blocks low on the 2-yard line. So what's the result of the play here?
Ball out of bounds in the end zone.
Touchback.
Yep. Perfect. Yeah, touchback.
Touchback.
So our result of the play is a touchback. But we have a few things that happen, right? We had a change of possession here. And we had a foul that occurs both before the change of team possession and after the change of team possession. So what's going to happen here? Team B is going to try to decline offsetting fouls to keep the football, right? But the problem is, when that happens, A is going to end up declining the penalty for B96's foul. So when B declines 1 foul, well, all A needs to do to keep the football after the fact, since the ball belongs to them at the end of the play, is decline B's block below the waist, and lo and behold, we take the results of the play which is a touchback. It's not advantageous for Team B to accept offsetting fouls, since if they accept the foul and then Team A accepts the block below the waist after the change of team possession, the ball returned to the previous spot, which is the A48. So no matter what, on this particular play, A is going to end up with the football. The kicker is if they each decline each other's foul, we're taking the result of the play, which is the touchback, versus them accepting each other's foul and going to the previous spot in the 48-yard line. Again, getting yourself to the result of the play is huge. That's the first thing we need to do. Most of us nailed this one, a majority of us. 67% got this one right. 4th and 10 on B's 40. And the second that number 4 comes up, or the word fourth comes up, I instantly go to 4th down fumble rule. Like we treat it in a game, our pre-snap routines matter. If you see a fourth, roll your arms sometimes and think about the 4th down fumble rule. So if you see the word fumble, or if you see the word a player drops, or a player misses the whiffs on the kick, or something that alludes to a fumble, you already have in your head that you're thinking about 4th down fumble rule. And if the ball's picked up by someone other than the fumbler, then the ball's dead immediately and it goes back to the spot of the fumble. On this play, this is exactly what happens. 4th and 10 on the 40-yard line. A33 is running on B's 36 when he gets pulled down to the ground with a horse collar tackle. He fumbles in the process. A77 recovers while grounded. What's the clock at? What's the result of the play? Anybody? What's our result? I'm losing the crowd here.
So Jeremy, it would be under taking 4th down out would be a 1st down for A.
Correct.
But because it's 4th down, we got to come back to the spot of the fumble.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
keep going. You got it.
So the result would be turnover on downs over to B because they didn't make the line to gain.
Absolutely, yes. Yep. So the result of the play is B 1st and 10 on the 28-yard line. And use caution. Thank you for speaking up, Mark, because you brought up an example of an instance, another instance of waste that could come up during the rules test discussion. We talked about, or you brought up, well, it was a 1st down for Team A if it wasn't on 4th down, but because of the 4th down fumble rule, all that stuff doesn't matter. And if you're processing that and thinking about that, that's stuff that could cloud the actual testing process to get you to the right answer. So when it gets you to when you talk about results of the play, go straight to the result based off of what's written in the question, based off the rule. The result of the play here is B 1st and 10 on B's 28. Now then we can go process the rest of the stuff. During the run, we had a defensive foul for a horse collar tackle. So how do we enforce that? If we go back to our 2-dimensional timeline, it was before the fumble. What's the basic spot on a running play for a defensive foul?
End of the related run.
End of the run.
Absolutely. You guys got it. So now you're starting to piece together where we're going here. Where are we going to enforce the foul? We got it to a point now where we identify the result of the play, identified the basic spot. It just turns into a math question from here on out to get us to the correct answer. A 1st and 10 on the B21. Third question. Only a third of us got this one right. It's 3rd and 10 on B's 20. A24 fumbles on B's 12, and the ball rolls out of bounds on the 9-yard line. After the ball rolls out of bounds, A76 aggressively blocks late. The clock shows 9 seconds in the first half. Our options on this was a zap 10 to end the half, or 2 options, UNS, A 4th and 17 from the B27, or UNR, A 4th and 17 from the B27, with each of those having a clock status option of the ready and snap. So what's the objective of this question? There's a couple objectives actually.
Clock and status of the ball.
Okay, clock status is one. What's the ruling on clock status in this play is one objective of this question. What's the second one?
If it's a zap 10 or not.
Forward progress.
Nope, no, nothing to do with forward progress here. And I'll read the answers again. So it was zap 10.5 over was option A. Options B and C were unsportsmanlike conduct foul. A 4th and 17 to the B27.
UNS or
UNS
UNR.
versus UNR.
Yes, that's it. This is the debate of, is this a UNR foul or is this a UNS foul? That's the objective of this question here. Not that plus, do we know what the clock status is in the ZAP 10 rule? But what I'd like to talk to our crew about, and this can be debated based off of conferences and supervisors and everything, but what they're trying to tell us in the COC to standardize us between UNS versus UNR is evaluate the act and see what the individual is doing. If they're just doing a football act that's just a little too hard or a little too late, but it's still something fundamental to the game, it's a foul for unnecessary roughness. They're playing too hard. They played too late. They unnecessarily roughed someone, and that's it. Now, if they're doing a non-football act or just being a jerk during the dead ball, by all means, hit them with a UNS foul. But the way this question's worded here, he just says, A76 aggressively blocks late. He blocked too hard and he blocked too late. So this isn't something that we would want to put a counter on somebody for, because all he's doing is playing football, just playing football at the wrong time. So be careful when it comes to knowing the difference between UNS and UNR, because what we don't want to do, if that player already has a counter, is throw him out for a unnecessary roughness act when we actually classify it as a UNS foul. So here, correct answer isn't a ZAP 10 because the ball rolled out of bounds. And it's a UNR foul versus the UNS, the clock's going to start on the ready. Ball's returned to the spot of the fumble. The 15-yard penalty is enforced in the previous spot. There's no ZAP 10 because the clock was stopped when the fumble went out of bounds. Okay.
That's a forward fumble out of bounds?
Yes. So the clock will still start on the ready for play here.
Okay.
But because the ball went out of bounds prior to A76 blocking, we stopped the clock for that ball going out of bounds. Now, even though it's going to be brought back to the spot of the fumble, and even though we are going to start the clock on the ready for play, we are not going to have a ZAP 10 situation because that late hit did not cause the clock to stop. It was already stopped when the ball hit the sideline. Make sense?
Gotcha.
Other discussion on this one? Last question, then we can call it a session. 3rd and 4 on B's 24. A is down by 1 point. A88 catches a legal forward pass and advances to B's 4 where he fumbles. The ball rolls out of bounds through Team B's end zone. B96 roughed the passer. What's our result of the play here?
Touchback.
Correct.
Touchback.
Yep. The result of the play is a touchback. Okay. So now we think we have a running play or loose ball play here.
Loose ball.
Correct. And a forward pass. Does that even matter on this question based off of the foul? No. Perhaps. Because what does the roughing the passer rule state? So, Tony, you're a little loud for us. Sounds like you're in a car. I'm going to mute you. What's the rule state for roughing the passer? Or really any Team B personal foul on a loose ball play or loose ball down with that involves a forward
Choice
pass.
to enforce from previous spot or enforce from where Team A still owns the ball.
Yep. Except for when?
Change of possession, or they don't own the ball at the end of the play.
Yep. Unless a change of possession occurs during the down, right? So did a change of possession happen here? This is the objective of the question. Do we know the roughing the passer rule? So the result of the play was a touchback. 30% of us got this right.
So by definition, is a touchback change of possession.
Yep. To the group. Anybody want to go out on a limb?
That's after the possession.
Right. So a touchback is a ruling where the ball belongs to team B after the fact. Belongs to is temporary custody of a dead ball for Rule 2. And what Rule 9 says in the roughing the passer penalty is that it can be enforced from the end of the last related run, provided a change of possession does not occur during the down. And anytime we have a touchback, the change of possession does not occur during the down. It is a result of the end of the play, or it is what happens after the touchback. It's the fact that because of the result of the play was a touchback, the ball belongs to team B next. They never possessed the ball during the down, which means A has an option to enforce that roughing the passer foul from the end of the last related run, which is the 4-yard line, tack it on half the distance, and get first and goal. Those were our 4 questions. Hopefully you kind of see the process at work here, getting to the result of the play, breaking down and finding the objective of the question or what that objective actually is, and working your way backwards to get yourself to the right answer, ultimately at the end. Now, these were all purposely a little difficult out there, so don't get disheartened if you didn't get 1 or 2 or 3 of them right. It's not the end of the world. There were multiple curveballs thrown at these questions because I wanted to show you how to piece through some of the hardest questions out there. So kind of like when we're swinging a bat or a golf club, you put a weight at the end of it to get used to some extra weight. So it feels a lot lighter when you're actually doing the real thing in the box. Same thing here. Take a few harder questions. So when the easy ones come through on that CFO test and the COC test, some semi-easier ones, it'll be a little bit better for everybody out there. Quick recommendations. When the CFO National Rules Test comes out, find your tendencies. Take your time through that 100-question test. Categorize every question and see what categories you're good at and which categories you need a little help on. That'll give you at least a couple weeks to focus on those areas specifically before the COC test comes up. And again, those 4 categories were, let's go back to the presentation just so you can see them again. There they are. Rules knowledge, scoring plays, try and overtime downs, penalty enforcement, changes of possession. Those 5 categories should fit practically every rules question in existence. You guys will be able to go out there and find out what your tendencies are. Figure out your process, get a piece of scratch paper down, try to work on doing the same thing every single time, because when you develop that routine, you'll ultimately minimize your waste when it matters most. And with that, I think covers everything I had. We're about an hour in, which was what the plan was. Eventually, we can go to some Q&A really quick. I see the Q&A chat is still blank, but folks who have something, if you want to unmute, you can give it for the entire group. If not, you have my email. Be happy to get back in touch with you guys downstream. So more sessions. What you guys will be able to do, I think, at least for those folks who are invited in the COC, the DEI committee is putting together 3 presentations. One of them was already on Wednesday last week. The next two are on Wednesday the 7th and Wednesday the 14th. I think Amy might be on the call if you want to give a quick plug to those, Amy. She might have left. So that note or that notification went out. Both Nick Brigatti and myself will be on those calls the next 2 weeks as well. And we're going to be putting our 2 cents in for more of a support role with Amy and Sean leading that group. Other questions, other thoughts?
Hey, Jeremy, did you mention that Nick has some like quiz email distribution thing at the beginning of the presentation?
Yes, I did. Let me get that link out to you guys as well. If you guys want to join. This is the homepage to the NERSA NCAA group. Nick sends out a weekly email. All you need to do is go to that website, enter your email and your name, or I guess complete a little bit larger of a Google form than just name and email, but he'll add you to the distribution list, which will give you the access to the remaining links of the rest of the presentations coming up, the link to the YouTube channel where all these presentations get uploaded, along with any other study material that the group gets access to throughout the off season. Last call for questions before we call it a night. Perfect. Well, fantastic, folks. Be on the lookout on the YouTube channel for the recording if you want to refresh. You have my email address. Hopefully this helps you out. Happy testing. Good luck for the CFO test in a couple weeks, and best of luck for that COC test at the end of June, early July. Have a great night, everybody. Enjoy the week. We'll talk soon enough. Hopefully our paths cross in the fall. Take care.
Thank you.